The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in their field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone has found and hid. Then in their joy they go and sell all that they have and buy that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? They answered, yes. And he said to them, therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Have you understood all this? What a stupid question. With all due respect to Jesus, you can't exactly unload 5 rapid-fire parables like that and expect your hearers to understand immediately without question. For the last couple of weeks, we've been playing around in the sandbox of the 13th chapter of Matthew's Gospel, beginning with the parable of the sower, and then jumping ahead to the explanation of the parable of the sower. Then we heard the parable of the weeds and the wheat, and then jumped ahead to the explanation of the parable of the weeds and the wheat, and you get the point. These parables are dense, almost like riddles. They require explanation precisely because the disciples don't understand them immediately. The first 2 mini parables that we hear this morning, the mustard seed and the yeast, actually fall between last week's parable of the weeds and the wheat and its subsequent explanation, which is then followed immediately by the next 3 mini parables that we hear of a treasure hidden in a field, a pearl of great value, and a fishing net thrown into the sea. Have you understood all this? Jesus asks when he's finally done rattling off these parables. Here's my theory. Behind that deceptively simple yes is an absolutely exasperated bunch of disciples. Enough parables, they think to themselves. If we just say yes, maybe he'll stop talking. But really, have you understood all this? Of course not. How could they? Jesus is talking about deep stuff about what God and God's reign are like. A sower that is extravagant, wasteful even, in sowing seed no matter the terrain, because that's what God's love is like. There is enough and then some to go around so that all might experience it. Or a field of wheat and weeds that are allowed to grow together not because the farmer is bad at their job, but because the farmer is patient. Because that's what God, who is full of mercy and abounding in steadfast love, grace, and forgiveness, is like. That kind of extravagant love is mind-blowing and life-changing. That's the point of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Have you understood all this? Of course not. That kind of extravagant love doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't make it any less true. And Jesus doesn't stop there. The kingdom of heaven is like a tiny mustard seed that takes over like an invasive species until it is everywhere. The kingdom of heaven is like a handful of yeast mixed into 3 measures, or about 144 cups of flour, enough to yield slices of bread for over 400 sandwiches, by one commentator's estimation. This kingdom of heaven, this commentator says, is like a woman who wants to do more than feed her family. The kingdom is like a woman who wants to feed the village, who wants to feed even the world. Extravagant grace and abundant love, like a net cast into the sea that catches and pulls in fish of every kind, as valuable, at least, as a treasure hidden in a field or even one fine pearl. Have you understood all this? Now, of course, we still have to grapple with the judgment present in these parables. Twice now in as many Sundays, we've heard that ominous-sounding phrase that maybe makes some of us squirm a bit, weeping and gnashing of teeth. Christians have a way of getting hyper-fixated on tiny details like that, usually in an effort to determine who's in and who's out, and of course to make sure that we're a part of the in crowd. But proportionally speaking, those couple of verses take up just a fraction of the 7 parables that have spanned over 50 verses in just this one chapter. 7 parables that over and over again double down on the extravagant, abundant nature of God's limitless love. That's the point. Not who's in and who's out, like the farm workers from last week who so desperately want to uproot all of the weeds to the detriment of the wheat. The point is that the reign of God's love is too abundant to put limits on, too plentiful to be concerned with where it lands or who deserves it, too surprising to be predictable or ever fully understood. That's what the kingdom of heaven is like. I don't think we'll ever fully understand a love like that. But it is certainly a love that each of us has been invited to fully experience here and now.